A new report shows that last year, hackers breached over 1 billion accounts. As if that wasn't enough, they also fucked over the American people. The Trump Report starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
Oh, I know. Why do you gotta dip into the blue ink? I know. Right away I go with the filthy language, but
I'm impressed.
well, sometimes you gotta do it. You know. By the way, I forgot to comment. Last week you actually laughed at my joke, and I don't know that happens that often. Welcome to the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. For those watching on YouTube, to my left, your right, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia, and as always, Scott Moore at SMan80. And don't forget that our own personal Twitter for the show is at Trump Report ABTV. I just emphasized the at. And we've been begging for followers for Trump Report ABTV. And we got to our 100th. If you have a moment in the booth, we'll show it at some point. If we don't have it this second, it's fine. We got to our 100th follower. Yep. And as of right now, we're at 109. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good clean living. Anyway, so we heard Guns N' Roses Civil War. And it's probably not the main thing to talk about, but the Civil War will come up in the course of our conversation this evening. At the top of the show, in addition to my filthy language, I did sort of reference some hackers, and this isn't exactly, top news of the day, but it kind of ties into everything. This actually ties into the fact that my wife works for Orange is the New Black, and hackers...
Wait, what?
Yeah.
We have never had this
conversation.
conversation.
No, you do the after show for that, or you have in the past.
Yes, from the beginning.
Yeah, she works there. And we got a random text message that was like asking her something, and and it mentioned the fact that she was a writer's assistant. And we're just like, well, that's weird. And we blocked their caller ID and we called the number. Turns out it's not a real number. It's some like weird computer text program. And then the news comes out this week that they were basically holding Netflix hostage, saying, we're going to release the episodes on the internet if you don't give us money.
Wow.
So this tells me a little something, that hackers are not very smart, because that's a show for Netflix that when it gets released, it all goes out on the internet at the same time. They're holding it hostage about 2 months ahead of time, not even 2 full months. It's really about 6 weeks at this point. So that's some bad hacking. That's also some bad extortion. That's some bad ransoming.
But they even got your wife's number?
Well, all you need is a crew list of everybody who works on the show. It's actually, they probably just got one file. And I mean, if they're hackers, they maybe got somebody's email. People on the show really carried on with it and had fun with it. My wife and I were just like, well, I don't know what this is. And we forgot about it until this story happened. The reason I bring this up on the Trump Report, as opposed to the Orange is the New Black after show, is hackers are not very smart. So I'm starting to really have trouble with the idea that they hacked into the election. But I've always had a problem with that.
Why, you don't think they did?
Oh, no. I mean, I think that, there might have been some irregularities.
You just don't understand their motive?
No, I just don't think they're good enough at it. I don't think Russians are very good at anything, except for you, Vlad. You're my boy.
Hey, they're good at vodka.
I'm trying to get him on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we'll do the Putin report. But, I don't know. It's just that's really that's how I tied it into my little joke at the beginning, a topic that we do talk about a fair amount. Something that Hillary Clinton was talking about earlier this week, too, is Russian tampering with the election. I think that Hillary Clinton needs to believe that she would have become president if the election was on October 27th, because that's exactly what she said. She said after the WikiLeaks, John Podesta emails, and the Comey comments that that's really what did her in. But she needs to believe that. Fortunately for Hillary, we'll never know. I'm of the frame of mind that she was not going to win that at that point either.
Because it came down to like less than 100,000 votes.
Right.
Yeah, scattered votes here and there. I do think it's possible.
I think so too. I don't want to be, it's hard to be, like you said, hypothetical.
Yeah.
Like the same thing we had last week. Oh, these, 96% of Trump voters would vote for him again right now if the election were held now. And it's so hypothetical you wouldn't know. But I would tend to believe that if the election was October 27th, or even if it was back in August, she would have won easily. Because at the time, she was definitely way, way, way ahead of him. But it's still it's so hypothetical. You would never know. And it's
so
even think about it.
Not the poll of Trump supporters. I want the poll of people who didn't vote.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with that. Like, who are the people
Or
that
people-
didn't vote that are now motivated to vote?
People
and-
like somebody we may have talked to right before the show who voted for a third party, who, not Jill Stein apparently. Maybe you weren't part of that conversation.
No.
Yeah, it wasn't Drexel. Don't worry. We
No.
all know that
Drexel's
Drexel voted.
third party.
I think Drexel has an "I'm with her" tattoo somewhere on his person, so we don't have to worry about that. Anyway. The one thing that she said that I thought was very salient from Mrs. Clinton, which I guess you can still call her
Mrs.
Secretary Clinton, that President Trump, quote, should worry less about the election and my winning the popular vote than doing some other things that would be important for the country. Now, it's not like he talks about it as much as he did, but he does still, it comes up. Like,
What do you mean? Do you see the NRA talk that he gave the other day was like all about my winningness?
Right. Well, that's
handing
what I'm
out
saying.
Electoral College map victory papers to people now. Like, he's still doing that, apparently. It's ridiculous.
So you're saying he's still hung up on it. But anyway, the point is like, you don't hear it. I think I don't hear about it as much. I'm not as much of a Trump fan as you guys. I guess that's what it is. You guys keep better tabs on him. And by the way, if we could get the chat
It
up
is
on
the
the
Trump
screen,
report.
I would like to see what
Yeah.
people are saying in the chat about all of this. Now, this is not exactly where I thought that we should really lead off, but because I made my little hacker joke, I thought we would start talking about that. The episode is called Civil War. We played Civil War by Guns N' Roses. President Trump said that the Civil War could have been averted if Andrew Jackson were around when the war broke out. And he said that Jackson saw it coming. He talks an awful lot about Andrew Jackson. He talks about, what an important president he was. He goes on and on about Andrew Jackson. Well, I'm convinced that he has a still as of yet produced Andrew Jackson musical that's, pretty much a cheap knockoff of Hamilton, and he's just really trying to get it out there in the zeitgeist.
What I've heard is that referring to Andrew Jackson is a dog whistle to, tell me the group that I'm trying to think of right now that
The
I can't
alt-right?
think of.
Yeah. Well,
Basically, yes.
The Klan?
White supremacist.
Okay, yeah. So that's,
So that's why he's mentioning him so much and is acting like such a fan.
Is he the guy that is getting replaced on Money by Harriet Tubman, or is that somebody else?
no, that's the
is
$20
him.
bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, because I think originally there was talk they were going to replace Alexander Hamilton on the 10, and then obviously he's very popular now, so you can't replace him. But anyway, by the way, DVD C78 in the chat, he said that he didn't vote. And look, I do think there were a lot of people that, I don't know. Well, DVD 78, I know that there's a little bit of a lag time. Let us know that if you got a chance to do it again, would you still not vote? He said that Hillary forgot about Middle America. I think that that's very accurate, and we'll talk more about that.
But I
at some
wonder
point.
now, Middle America, seeing what Trump was about to do to healthcare, I guess what he still foresees
What he wants to do, yeah.
this tax plan, which does not help Middle America, anything really that's been done, if the non-voters of Middle America would be inspired to vote. Either way, I would want to know.
Right. I
Who
would
can we
too.
get to get on that poll?
Right. Because
Zombie? It's the funniest polling company that I could think of. But I don't know. So we're getting, we hear a lot about alternative facts and fake news. I guess that President Trump is sort of putting out alternative history, and I don't want to get bogged down in a conversation about the Civil War, but the president did bring it up. When he says things like this about Andrew Jackson, let's discount the idea of the dog whistle just for a moment, just talking about it sort of at face value. I'll start with Scott. Your thoughts on, should he just not open his mouth?
Oh, good luck with that.
right. I mean,
That's the only solution I can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, where do we start with that? Because it was just it was absolutely ridiculous. I actually had tweeted back about, maybe we should just put him in a time machine and send him back, since he always talks about he's the only one that can fix things, because that basically makes as much sense as his tweet did about Andrew
We're
Jackson.
going to have to do a segment on the show where you read some of your tweets at President Trump.
It's
not only President Trump. You do
No,
that
it's
with, but
Kellyanne, it's Paul Ryan,
I feel
it's
like
Sean Spicer.
Bannon's not on Twitter, is
no.
he? Yeah.
Sean
It's Sean
Spicer,
Spicer, yeah.
of course, Mitch McConnell, because he definitely deserves it too. But it's ridiculous. He really, it's going back to. I honestly, I don't understand why he even says these things. Where besides the dog whistle thing, like what is he hoping to gain from this? What was the point? It was like the Frederick Douglass comment. Like, why even say this stuff? He has no
doesn't
clue.
know what he's talking about,
He has no clue, and he sounds crazy. I mean, it sounds like the old man, was he like waking up in the middle of the night and Andrew Jackson's ghost is now talking to him and telling him these things
don't
in the
rule
White
it
House?
out. I mean, the White House could be haunted. Well, I was going to say the White House could be haunted, but he barely ever sleeps there. So, maybe Mar-a-Lago is haunted with the ghost
That's
of
true,
Andrew
because
Jackson.
Andrew Jackson was down there with the Seminole, Native American Wars down there and went through.
Wait, he went to Florida State? Is that what you're saying?
Andrew Jackson, yes.
See there.
And he taught there, and he was...
Hashtag alternative history.
But yeah, he spent a lot of time in Florida, so who knows? Maybe he's having
DVD78 followed up and said he would not vote. He just lets the cards fall where they may. That's absolutely your right to do that. I don't know what state you live in. Like him or not, Trump is getting a lot done already.
Interesting.
Well, we could definitely talk about that one.
He's putting his signature on a lot of things. He's talking about a lot of things.
Well, if you count executive orders
yes.
as running a country, fine. He's written more of those than any other president in this period of time. But not that long ago, Trump was saying that signing executive orders is not presidential. That's not how you run a country. He gave Obama endless crap for doing that.
And they only go so far. And a lot of them were just overturning some Obama regulations. It's not like he's actually done much with those executive orders.
The courts have struck down.
Exactly. So
this is like what, how there's people that they're always busy, but like they're not really accomplishing much. It's just that it's cool to be busy.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, anyone
You're
who's
like, hey, how are you? They're like,
I'm
oh my
so
God,
busy.
so much going on.
anyone who's ever been a temp knows how you need to kind of perfect that,
Right.
That really looking so busy, just
keep papers around,
the
type
occasional,
of
like
few
the messy
things.
desk and the,
yeah.
whereas you haven't done anything all day. Yeah. But anyway, so one of the things he's trying to get done, President Trump, is to get this budget pushed through, and it can very easily be characterized as a victory for Democrats. They got $5 billion in new spending, and they really kind of leveraged some of the disagreements between the Trump White House, the GOP lawmakers. Unless I'm mistaken, there's no funding for the wall in there.
Nope. You're
And
correct.
not only is there no funding for the wall between the U.S. and Mexico, there's no funding for Roger Waters' The Wall, where he plays the Pink Floyd album. No government subsidies for that wall, and no walls at all, basically. So it's obviously very exciting. Now, President Trump, he tweeted that the United States needs a good shutdown. He thinks that, okay, this is going to go on for a little while, but this fall, we're going to get a good shutdown. I almost swore again, but that one was unintentional. And he suggested that this, he might actually reverse some of these Senate rules that require the supermajority to approve most major pieces of legislation. And I hear a lot of things about, he wanted to change the libel laws. There's a lot of things that he says he wants to do. Let's talk about both of those. I did want to start with you, Chelsea. I'm not sure. I feel like he can't change those things. Maybe he can do an executive order that one. Let's start first with the supermajority, and then we can talk about the libel laws, because that's just an afterthought I brought up.
I mean, I guess conceivably that's possible for him to get.
But wouldn't the Senate need to do that? I don't think the president can do it.
Because he can convince the Senate to do it.
What, you mean for libel?
No, we'll talk about that in a second. But
the
supermajority, changing the voting rules.
I mean, because the voting rules are sort of just in the spirit of the understanding that the Senate was supposed to be about a supermajority. It was not supposed to be such a close call. But
right, so you had to compromise, and the Senate was the deliberative, thinking kind of house, of the two, and then the House was just more of a majority rule, was a little more, partier is what I could call it, more ruckus. And the Senate was like, okay, we're going to take our time and think about it and get consensus and get that bipartisan support. And that's what it was. And that's why it always did take a long time to get things passed, because you had to have compromise and you had to get both sides to agree to things. And like you said, now they're trying to do away with that, like they did with Supreme Court justices and other things. So they are trying to whittle away. But, right now they can't do a budget or anything else without Democratic support.
So let's talk about President Trump's ability to change the libel laws so that he can basically sue.
No abilities, because the libel laws are not federal. They are all by state. And he is not the president of each of the states. He is the president.
But I mean, he's the president of all the states. So doesn't that mean that he could?
No, it's constitutional. You'd have to you'd have to go through the whole process of it passing the House, the Senate, and 3/4 of the states to change anything
in the
constitutional.
Supreme Court, the big libel case is New York Times versus Sullivan, and that one came out in like 1964. So if it's been law for that long, it's unlikely to change. I mean, barring something massively
You could say that
important.
about Roe versus Wade. It's been law so long, it's unlikely to change. But there are obviously a lot
Libel
of...
laws are much less controversial than abortion.
Yeah, it seems to be that he would probably be the only one talking. I mean, maybe the Kardashians.
The funny thing
but there's not that many people
is that
talking
if he
about this.
did that,
Right.
he would open himself
Exactly. I
up to
was
more
going to say it actually
lawsuits.
it's worse for him to do that.
Think of all the people that
yes,
he's called losers.
I mean,
you just
it's-
prove you're not a loser, and
all
right there
the-
you can sue him.
all those news.
Well, but
news
that's opinion because
places.
that's not
Right.
Okay, so that's not
libel.
libel.
But President Obama wiretapped
Right.
me. That's now a statement of fact, not an
Yes,
opinion.
exactly.
Now perhaps that can go through, and actually, as of right now, could be a viable case for defamation right now.
Against President Obama.
President Obama could make a claim against Trump for that statement.
I feel like he's having too much fun.
He's
to worry
not
about
going
stuff
to,
like that.
but
Yeah.
if
But
we
he
just
could,
look at the letter of the law,
right? If you
Yeah.
really wanted to, you know, and that is the thing, it would actually work against Trump, which I think is funny, and all those news organizations that claim to be giving factual news that are actually fake news
that would
would
actually
also
be really
be up
interesting.
for issues as well. So, yeah.
In the
But
chat,
it won't happen.
Hugh Hoyland says, talk about Mexico's immigration policies. Can't say that I'm well versed in it, but what I do know is that it's very tough to get from Guatemala into Mexico and Mexico's
Yeah.
southern border. So they really defend that border. Their northern border, well, I guess because we're not really heading in there, they don't seem to care as much
Right.
about it. I'm not saying that there needs to be a wall, but you know, just the existing protocols in place could probably.
Well, I mean,
be
look,
enforced
everyone
little
has a
bit more
right.
strongly.
A country has a right to defend and set up its immigration, and that's true. But setting up this wall is a complete and utter waste of money, and that's not how you solve the problem. And I think
One of the
it's-
reasons why it's a waste is actually because of something that Trump correctly cited. I think when was it? Was it his NRA speech? I can't remember. But he said that immigration from Mexico has gone down 73%. And
I
that-
believe I've heard that statement, not in that speech, but I've heard that fact that he said that. Yes.
that number is accurate. What it leaves out is the fact that that was a trend anyway. That was going on. That was
Right.
happening in the last, I don't know how many years.
years since like 2008. Really, you can go back.
That the net immigration has been a loss, so reduced. So we didn't, even before Trump, before anybody knew his name as a presidential contender. So he can't really claim responsibility for that. Of course, we know that he will and he does, but he is not responsible for that. And so now that it is so low, is this really worth $20 billion? I can't imagine
No.
anybody that will say that it is.
Well, that's why people in his own party are not backing up, supporting the budget of this
But he's
wall.
trying to drum up support by having this voice hotline.
Okay, but obviously Mexico's going to pay for it, so why are we so worried? Why are we even talking about what the price tag is? He's going to get them to pay for
You're
it.
going to get us tagged as fake news because of comments like that.
I'm just DVD 78. Fake news is MSNBC confirmed. I'm not quite sure what he meant by that. Can we scroll back up in the chat? There was something that I meant to write down, but I didn't bring a pen, and that therefore I'm an idiot. We're still building the wall. Now Mexico a little bit higher up. Keep going. Sorry, this is bad broadcasting. But there's something that I liked there. That's all right. I wish I could find it, but.
Less healthcare and contraception for
Lady
all.
Goth says, "Man, we're all gonna die," but I don't think that was it. But Trump is temp in chief. That's what it was. R. Scott Brown, who I'm like, wait, is that former Senator Scott Brown? That's why I wish I had my pen, because I wanted to say that he's temp in chief, looking very busy. But
Yes, he is.
I guess every president is a temp in chief. Just
Well,
some
they are
pretty. Yeah.
Some of them are longer than others too. Then
Except for FDR, everybody was a temp in chief.
yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know. I mean, I think that Trump is realizing that you actually have to compromise if you want to do things, and he figures he'll placate the base by saying, like, we're gonna, maybe we'll have a shutdown in the fall, but nobody wants a shutdown in the summer, because it's obviously not.
shutdown
No
is
one wants a
gonna
shutdown period.
backfire on
Yeah.
Republicans
It is just like it did
hard.
last time, and
Right.
it's ridiculous to even have that discussion. It doesn't do anything positive for anyone on either side. So for him to even suggest that again is idiotic and naive. Which again, he's learning the hard way, but he's learning. He's learning that what he says isn't actually reality, and the things that he promised, which we talked about last fall, is like his supporters are going to be disappointed because there's not going to be a wall. They're going to be disappointed because he's not going to bring back these manufacturing jobs. He's not going to be able to bring back healthcare and what he said he was going to do. I mean, it's all not going to happen, and it's silly that he continues try to blame Democrats like he does on Twitter and blame other people when it has absolutely nothing to do with them. It's on him and the Republican Party now because they're in control.
Also Schwarzenegger. It's Schwarzenegger's
Yes,
fault.
well, of course.
Apparent. Well, let's move it over to health care. President Trump says he thinks it's time for another vote on health care. Paul Ryan disagrees because he knows that they don't have the 216 votes that they need to get it passed.
Nope.
They're not too far off, but there's a good, I think what I was reading earlier today, it's about 20 that are undecided and, you know, not undecided in the way of convince me to vote for it.
Right.
That it seems like it's not going to happen. And I mean, what are they going to do? You know, basically like pull it off the floor again if it becomes apparent. So I feel like the vote is not forthcoming, but President Trump gets to say that, and then it's Paul Ryan's problem.
Right.
Do you think, Chelsea, that we will see another healthcare vote anytime? Let's say before the government shutdown in the fall.
No.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about it. So it's May now.
Right.
Happy May Day, comrades. And it's May now. And so it's almost the summer. And look, Congress doesn't work a lot during the rest of the year, but they really don't work during the summer. So, you know, nobody's looking to try and, you know, do anything that's going to require even minimal effort at this point, I think. So, Scott, do you think that we'll see anything anytime
Well,
soon?
and then you get closer and closer to the midterms. Now, one thing they could try to do is if they feel like they could make it happen at the beginning of next year, because they're also going to run into just being too late because people have to sign up for Obamacare next year, and that's going to happen in the fall, and so they're going to kind of lose that time frame too. So one hand, I've heard, you know, they may try to push something through early next year because then by the time it goes into effect, it's after the midterm election.
Right.
So anything that's horrible, negative would be after the fact, and hopefully they would be voted back in ostensibly. But I think if they don't get anything done by the fall, it's not going to happen until after the midterms because they're not going to want to.
They have hated this law
Right.
since 2008. It has been 9 years, and you couldn't think of anything that would satisfy your party.
That's the problem. Well, here's the problem. The thing is that Obamacare did come from a conservative thing, and that's the biggest problem. They only hate it because it was done by him and not than anything else. This was based on Romney Care in Massachusetts from the Heritage Foundation. It was a conservative approach. It was not even democratic. And that's why they have no other alternative that's going to be able to help. And the problem was when they were a party of no through all those years, they did not come up with another plan because they didn't think they were going to be back in power. It was easier just to say no and have their little ceremonial no votes every time to bring it back to Obama's desk for him to veto. But they have no other plan. And then the other problem was they're trying to shove something through at the beginning of the year without really thinking it out. Instead of like, let's take our time to really come up with an alternative that's going to be successful. They want to cram something through, and they have too many factions right now, so it's not going to work.
If they want to make a difference, I mean, the
Right.
thing is that Trump painted himself into a corner by saying repeal and replace 20 million times.
Right, yes.
If he had said that we're just going to improve health care
Right.
for Americans, he'd have greater options.
He would, and improve what Obamacare was lacking. And we all know there were issues with Obamacare, but instead of them coming through and saying, let's improve it, you're right. They want to do this whole repeal thing and start from
The
scratch.
problem is that if he does anything, he's going to have to fight with the insurance companies, and I don't think Trump has that in him.
And we can see he's not a good negotiator. That, again, another lie of his. He's a terrible negotiator because he can't even get people from his own party to come together on things. So let alone can you get people from the other side to come together.
Don't people realize he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal? He clearly knows what he's doing.
Of
You
course.
should just go along with him. Yeah, I have to agree that I don't think we're going to see it, especially because in their mind, once you get past the summer,
Right.
September's the end of the year in their mind because, again, they barely work in December either. And then it's like we really got to focus on the midterms.
Right, and
nobody wants to have this vote anywhere near the midterm
And they
elections.
really can't anyways because, again, when people have to sign up for policies, again, for Obamacare, they're not going to be able to do something and then have it go into effect that quickly to turn that around. So they're already missing that window. You know, what they could do is continue to starve Obamacare funds, which make it weaker and weaker, but that's them not standing up to doing the laws of what they should be doing.
Do you guys have Obamacare cover California? Or do you have?
I
others?
have in the past.
I do
not at the
currently,
moment, but I have in the
and
past.
I just found out that a little bit of my subsidy went away, so it's it's like another $100 a month all of a sudden. So I
Ouch.
think that's exactly what's happening there.
Oh yeah, they're
Is
trying to take it away to make it less popular, to now, you know, to starve it. So now people will be like, oh, let's do something else.
Yeah.
Which is horrible. I get the politics side of it, but you're affecting people's lives, and why you would be not doing what the law intended and work on fixing it is what's really just incredibly.
They should just
upsetting
replace
about
it with Cobra, and then everybody has to spend $6,000
geez.
a month on their insurance, and then nobody's happy, and everybody goes bankrupt.
And like you were saying, Chelsea, about having access. That's the language they're using. They're talking about having states be able to pick and choose the what policies they want to enforce, and they're saying, well, everyone will have access, and people with pre-existing conditions, but it would be up to the states to decide that, and that sets some people up in a very dangerous situation to have pre-existing conditions to not be covered. So.
And now, who knew that Jimmy Kimmel was going to be the poster boy
Right.
for defending pre-existing conditions?
Yes, although I did see a very funny tweet from a conservative friend who said, listen, if we're going to have policy dictated by anyone from The Man Show, it should be Adam Carolla. Just thought it was very funny. But to his point, he has obviously, and if anybody's seen the video, which I think most people have at this point, or if you're even remotely interested, take a look for it. And yeah, he is able to really speak with experience. And I think that's what helps, is when somebody that people identify with is like, well, here, let me tell you my story. And, for all the times the politicians, they, oh, look, there's somebody sitting at the State of the Union address. Let's have them stand up and I'll tell their story. That's not as effective as like, oh, that guy whose show I watch, he's pretty funny. And like, oh, wow, that's important to him. Let me think about it. I think that means a lot. DVD78 said a little bit earlier in the chat, is this an anti-Trump show? DVD78, you've seen this show many times. And I think that the approach is to be a somewhat unbiased approach to it, but he makes it very difficult. But I will tell you, all I hear is pick. He's the president, and there's a lot to pick at.
Right,
but
a lot to be critical of.
easy.
But here's what
yeah.
I will tell you, DVD78 and everyone else, and I don't see Sturgeon resident. I'm worried about him.
Yeah.
If he's not in the chat, I hope he's okay. Let us know if you're all right. But something that I wanted to talk about was, and it was an opinion piece for the Washington Post, but it was in the Washington Post, and it said that the first 100 days were a disaster for Democrats. Because what they haven't addressed in all of these months, I say this most weeks, that you still have Hillary Clinton talking about Russia and the election being stolen away from her. But what they're not addressing is the people who did rightfully vote against her. And there is actually a decent percentage of people who voted for Obama twice and were like, no, I'm voting for Trump because this is what I feel like is important. And they're not really doing any kind of outreach to those people, and that could be hard to believe in Los Angeles that these people exist. Let me give one number, and then I'll let you speak. According to a Washington Post ABC News poll, so it's not like it's Fox News National Review, it's Washington Post ABC. 2% of Americans who voted for Trump regret their votes, while 96% say it was the right thing to do. Democrats really haven't made inroads with those people. But what were you going to say about this, Chelsea?
I was excited actually to see this article when you posted that we were going to be covering it. I thought, oh, this is going to be something good that I haven't thought. For some reason, I wasn't moved by the argument that Democrats have just become the party of no, that the resistance is just all about being anti-Trump itself. The problem is that people hate what he stands for and the legislation that he's trying to push. So that's why there's a massive resistance to him. Not
but when you
because
say
it's just,
people, who are the people you're talking about
Well,
that
but
hate
look-
his legislation?
But let's look at the healthcare. Both sides
Yeah,
hated it.
that's true.
Right.
So for some reason, I just, and I also looked at the author's bio, and
Right,
he
he's-
is a George W. Bush speechwriter, so he sees the world a little
Right.
differently
He was
than I do.
in that world very far. Exactly. He's a speechwriter and from that.
So I
But
just,
I think that
didn't buy it.
there's some, you can disagree with some of the numbers thrown around, but the idea that Democrats aren't doing enough, and
Well-
we're talking about, we're practically in the mindset of the
But
midterm
it's-
elections are around the corner.
The Democrats are supposed to destroy the Republicans. The Republicans are doing what they're doing. And
So you think just taking a back,
no,
just
I was-
kind of putting your
I
feet
would
up
actually,
and let them
But I would
implode?
twist that around though, in the fact that he hasn't gained anybody, and the thing was he only won with 46% or a little less of the actual people that were voting.
Right.
So he didn't win by a majority by any stretch. So him losing 2% doesn't really mean, if you twist it around, doesn't mean that it's a loss for Democrats, because he didn't really win by a clear majority anyways, and he lost the popular vote by millions. So all it takes is a little stretch for people to go out and vote. And, I think a lot of people, like you were saying, Chelsea, that were incredibly passionate, that were either on the progressive side that didn't feel the motivation to vote because they had 8 years of President Obama and they were happy and content, and they weren't hugely excited about Hillary Clinton, and they didn't think she was going to lose. So they sat out because they thought there's no way Donald Trump was going to win. So I think there was quite a large percentage of people that sat out that didn't feel the motivation to vote. So I don't take it from his article as being a positive at all for Republicans, because he's already lost 2% and he already had less than the majority to begin with, and he has not gained any voters. So it's the opposite, where he has not gained anyone to his side or any.
He's not losing anybody, but he's not bringing anyone
he's
else.
lost 2%. So already
Okay.
that's a big difference when you're talking about winning by such a narrow electoral college victory, because all you need to do is shave off a little bit here and there, and you get these people to come out that are now passionate, and you see like the special elections right now in Georgia, the June 20th runoff with John Ossoff and Karen Handel. And you see he's ahead by 1 percentage point in a very Republican district. And you see the sort of trends that are happening in Kansas with the special election to fill Mike Pompeo's seat. 7% difference compared to over 25% for him at the election. So you see that there's definitely, so I take it as the complete opposite of what he's saying. And I think as we lead up to 2018, what's going to be the standard even more than, because we do have a lot of Senate seats that we have to defend as progressives, as Democrats, but you have a lot of governor's races. You have 39 states that are going to have gubernatorial races, and that's, to me, what's going to be the future of where the Democratic Party is going to be, is in those type of races and some of those state races more than the national federal races, because we have gerrymandering, so a lot of the congressional seats are not going to be competitive. We have to defend way more Senate seats, so it's really going to come down to gubernatorial and local and state elections, and I see a lot of differences than he does, apparently, and I think his article was so over the top.
But Scott, how do you attest for the fact that President Trump had the largest inauguration day crowd in the history of the Republic? I mean, I don't know how to.
And the biggest electoral victory he kept tweeting about all the time, which again was not true. I think he won
for all the electoral victories
46th out of 58th.
What he was talking about during the NRA talk that he gave the other day.
Yeah, it was giving
They
out.
didn't think we had a path to 270, and they were right. You know why? Because we went to 306.
Yeah, well, actually 304, because he didn't get to.
Oh, that's right. It did end up being 304. So
I mean, she actually lost more too. So she
Chelsea,
only had 227.
do you think, you sort of alluded to this, and I just want to circle back to it. Do you think that Democrats, the best approach, at least right now, is just kind of let Republicans do their thing? They're going to be their own kind of worst PR.
Yeah, I think that the focus of the Democrats should not be on bashing Trump and the Republicans. They're going to
that's what
dig
Hollywood's
themselves
for.
a bigger disaster than Democrats could ever hope. What the Democrats should focus on is honing in their message, is in unifying, as the Tom Perez, Bernie Sanders unifying tour was supposed to do, but I don't think it really, I don't think did that so well, and I'm judging that based on the interview that Chris Hayes did with both Tom Perez and Bernie. You can see very distinctly that they are in different places. The Democrats need to focus on not ruining themselves the way that there are factions in the Republican Party, like the Freedom Caucus and the Paul Ryan people. So Democrats have enough to do in-house, much more effective, I think, in cleaning up house and cleaning up message and honing in on a strong, solid message than beating up Trump.
Right, and that is the one thing I will agree with his article, was the fact that we don't have a message, and the problem was only 28% of Americans felt the Democratic Party was of the people, and that goes back to what you're saying, Chelsea. We do have to find a message. We have to go back to our roots, and we do have to work on that, and that is an issue, and even like 30-40% of Democrats had that feeling too. So we do have that issue to work on, and that is key to work on that, but not to sit there and bash Trump all the time, because he has his own issues. And the thing is, it is kind of laughable going back to the article talking about Democrats being the party of no, and the Republicans made that into an art form during the Obama years. So kind of funny and hypocritical to
that's
throw
what
that back
they've
around.
been really good at doing, is hijacking these terms
and then
twisting
throwing it
them.
back on other people when they themselves did it forever. And part of my reason I love to troll Mitch McConnell, because he loves to do that.
Before we run out of time, there's something that might seem unusual that I do want to talk about, but I do want to talk about France for a moment, because they are having their vote on Sunday, and so we'll talk more about this next week as to depending on the result, the indication could actually say a lot. There seems to be a kind of an overall certainty that there's no way the far right candidate Marine Le Pen can win. That's going to be the actual decisive election, because this is a runoff. And anyone who thinks that there's no way, it doesn't make any sense, I say see two things. Trump, Donald J, and exit, bruh. The opposition, Emmanuel Macaroon, he's a former socialist from Francois Holland's staff at one point. This is not the time to be a socialist. I feel like, recent history tells me that, she's going to win. And maybe not big, but in the way that even a narrow margin will feel like a huge margin, because people just, nobody thought Brexit was going to happen. And in fact, after that, I'm like, oh man, well, they are screwed. But I mean, it's not like Trump. That's not going to happen. How could that possibly happen? Everyone's telling me it's not going to happen. And it's like, you just want to be the one person, I think. If you're any kind of commentator or opinion, columnist or something in France, you should be the one to be like, oh no, it's happening, because then you're going to look really smart on Monday. And then if you're wrong, you're like, oh yeah, everybody else was right. That's fine.
Right.
You just go back in with the herd. But
go back in with the herd. That's a good one.
Yeah. So, and obviously the ins and outs of France's electoral system and the way their country's run is a lot different. But Chelsea, do you hear this and does it sound at all familiar to you that there's no way that this far-right candidate can win in a country like France?
I mean, yeah, it's painfully like, ooh, don't
It's
say
like deja vu kind of feeling again.
It's like France took a TV show that everybody hates but is on here, and they're like, oh, we're going to remake that. We're going to put our spin on it. Or even a moderately successful. Basically, they're taking The Apprentice and they're going to do that in France.
The French version.
You're going to get the French version of The Apprentice.
I mean, it's interesting because if you look at it on face value, both of these candidates are sort of like the Donald Trump and the Bernie Sanders, because they are not the mainstream political parties of France on either side. So it's interesting that that's really never happened in French history. So it's already unique.
And there's a demand for some kind of outsider, for sure.
Yes, because Hollande had terrible approval ratings. I think he was down to like single digits at one point. Yeah, so I mean, it is atrocious. However, the only difference, and again, it depends. We can always go back and say, well, how much can we trust polls, right? But if you're really looking at the big picture, Macron has a much wider lead than Hillary Clinton ever did, so it would be a much bigger downfall for these polls to be wrong if he was to lose. So I'm still under the impression that he will win. I think it'll be narrower than 20%, because right now it's like 60-40. I do think it'll be closer, but I'm going to go on the line now and say that I do not think she will win when it's all said and done, but I do think it'll be a lot closer than we even think it is.
Well, it'll be interesting to see.
I also hope not.
No,
I think it'll also upheaval with the EU and other things.
If she doesn't win, I think that says a lot for. I think if she does win, then that does not bode well for the EU, which hasn't had a great year. The last 12 months for the EU. One thing I do want to talk about, since we have a few more minutes, they had the White House Correspondents' Dinner over the weekend, and the real one had Hassan Minhaj from The Daily Show. I don't watch The Daily Show with the new guy. His accent weirds me out. I just can't. Aww. I had no idea who this guy is.
I watch it, but not regularly.
Well, he's also not funny. So
what?
Trevor Noah, no.
I think so.
Well, different strokes for different folks, but his accent really bothers me. That South African accent, it hurts. But I read some of the jokes. I saw some clips. It was actually fairly funny.
I actually watched it. I'm such a nerd. I watched C-SPAN and I was watching it on Saturday night.
I usually do, but there was no excitement about it this year because it was somebody I had to look up who they were when I heard that they were doing it.
But he was the only one I watched. I didn't watch the whole other thing because it got a little boring.
And then there was the other one that Samantha Bee did, which
I watched part of
that one was a little bit more star-studded. Yeah. And I think that says a lot about the media right now, is that they're just like, all right, well, the president is going to come. By the way, the best White House Correspondents' Dinner ever was the one in 2011. Donald Trump was there.
Right.
Seth Meyers did that, and President Obama crushed.
He did.
That was a great set. I was on the radio at that point, co-hosting with Dennis Miller. Fairly conservative on a lot of things. Not a fan of Obama. That next morning, he's like, man, he was like a pro. He was so funny. And then we find out while he's doing that, there's the operation to kill to kill Osama bin Laden. He was president of something. Osama bin Laden at that moment
at the dinner,
it's going on. And he's like, oh, I'm going to just go tell some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So and just Trump was just really torn into in that. So obviously he's never going to go again.
Well, that's what they basically said made him kind of think about running for president, was after that night of being so humiliated that he decided he was going to come back and run. And when he realized he couldn't do it in 2012, it was still in the back of his mind to get that revenge in 2016. But yeah, I mean, look, he's always said he's going to kind of shake up the rules there, and he's the first president in years to not go. The last one that didn't go was Ronald Reagan because he was recovering from assassination attempt back in 1981.
It's a pretty lousy excuse.
I know, right? So that's
Did
the
Alexander
last time.
Haig
What a
go in his
lazy
place?
guy.
I know, right?
I'm pretty sure Alexander Haig.
So that's
went
the
in his
last
place.
time that a sitting president has not been. So, you know, it shows that he's so thin-skinned that he can't even handle being poked fun at. Because I think it would have been great for him to go and have his own jokes. I know he doesn't have a sense of humor at all, but, you know, someone writes the jokes, he shows up, he kind of has that little
He doesn't have
mending
a sense
with...
of humor about himself, but I
No.
mean, just over the years, he's been able to deliver jokes, you know.
I mean, if they're mean and you know, that kind of thing, sure, but he has no sense of humor.
Well, I asked this question specifically for Chelsea. I know you'll appreciate this. So he didn't go. He's the first president to not go since Reagan. Do you think that next year's White House Correspondents' Dinner, do you think President Pence will go? You don't have to answer that.
Only if Mother is there, because he can't go alone.
Well,
so
that was
Mother
one of the, that
has
was,
to be there.
That
Right,
was one of
does
the
his wife.
one of the
Yeah.
great jokes that Hassan Minhaj had was that Pence wasn't there because one of the women in the room was ovulating.
Yeah,
and
I
his
did
wife
hear
didn't
that.
know.
Yeah,
It was actually very funny.
Yeah.
The whole thing was very funny. I don't know what show you
There's-
were watching. What,
You know, okay, I think even the best ones, there's always a few moments that don't go over in the room, and then on paper they probably were funny. But you know, like when when Wolf
cracked
Blitzer
up.
gets upset, everybody else is like, oh.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. But I think it was funny.
Yeah.
I just think it was not my favorite.
What? Why?
Well, because that Seth Meyers one was the best. I mean,
Oh,
and
got it.
yeah, that one I think was very good. But anyway, I don't know if anybody watched it.
Nerd Prom, it wasn't the same.
There's Storage Yard Resident. Whew, I was worried. Here's what he did though. He
Our
didn't.
life, our world is
Well, I
together.
worried
It's
about
everything's
back.
okay again.
So yeah, and DVD 78 is absolutely right. He became the president who's laughing now, and he didn't need to go to an event where people are gonna make fun of him. He had his own event. He went to Pennsylvania with his people, his core demo, as it were.
And gave an incredibly divisive speech, one of the most divisive that in recent memory, even for him.
Yeah.
And that's again part of the issue is that he's not one to help divide or to unite the country like he kept claiming. He's dividing and continuing these campaign rallies because he needs the love and the adoration and everything else. He can't go and poke fun at people and let people poke fun of him, which shows again his character. But let's go out and be around people that are going to give him shower like a dictator, and let's divide the country. So yeah, if you think that was good, then
Well, I think he did because people applauded a lot. I don't even think he really thinks about it beyond that.
right, no, because it's those people. Of course,
Yeah.
you're going to be a hardcore fan that's going to go to that type of rally, and
Well, our last thing to talk about this week, as always, the time flies by, but the idea that President Trump did well in Pennsylvania, there's little rumblings about Joe Biden might run for president in 2020, and I have a friend who said that he definitely would have won Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I think Pennsylvania is probably more his kind of
he's from there, and that's his
Right.
That is his background. That's who he is.
So I think that's very true, and I
Right.
do think he would have campaigned better. But
No,
I do
absolutely.
think that people that like Biden kind of sort of forget that to a lot of people, he's basically, Dan Quayle with hair plugs. I mean, he was the butt
Well,
of a lot of jokes, just a
right.
lot of like, this is a big effing deal.
he's
you
sort
know?
of the Donald
Yeah.
Trump of the Democratic Party
Yeah.
because he says a lot of
And
things that you're like, whoa.
I think he, he still says he's not going to run in 2020. But then when you hear Terry McAuliffe's going to run, then everybody's like, oh, Joe, I'm pretty sure you need to run.
But don't forget, Oprah's going to run.
Right.
Okay.
But look, I don't think
You heard it here
I don't
first.
think either one of them are going to run. First of all, Joe Biden would be 78 by the time
Yeah.
he's running, which means he's going to be close to 80. I mean, we're just getting to the point.
That old Trump will be?
No, he's actually older
Trump
than
is
Trump.
70 this year.
Yes, he's actually like
So
2.5,
for
3 years older
re-election,
than
he'll
than,
be 73, 74.
Right. So
yeah.
yes, Trump is the oldest now, surpassing Reagan by a couple months. But we're just getting kind of ridiculous here because now we're going to have like 90-year-olds now running for president. There is a point where this is a not being ageist or anything, but it is a very difficult,
It's a very
stressful
demanding
job. And now we just keep
Even
getting
Trump would
older
say
and
that. He
older and
says-
older.
It's a lot
He
more
doesn't
work
get
than
to
he thought it would
drive.
be.
And
Yeah.
for the Democrats, we need to look for new people anyways. We're not retreading the
Like
old.
Oprah.
And Terry McAuliffe is too much of a insider from the Clinton years. Again, we need to clean house.
You got to have no
and
more Clintons.
He was there, the Clinton op for all those years. And, Virginia governor, you can only be governor one term. You can't do back-to-back. So he'll already be out of the governor's office after this year. So he's already going to be way out of office, so he doesn't even have anything that he can run on at that point anyways.
I think that people who like him, because they think he's kind of funny, he's charming, and all of that, he's a career politician. Of course,
and I think people are always drawn to the Southern Democrat. And Virginia is the new kind of blue state that's now a hardcore blue state that's in the South, and you've had Democratic governors succeeding each other one after the other since before Tim Kaine. You had Mark Warner, then Tim Kaine. Then you had the break with Bob McConnell, and that didn't go well. And then you have Terry McAuliffe, and you see that they have a lot of Democratic, the party's doing well there, and that's sort of the new South, and it's slowly spreading down to North Carolina, and then Georgia, and as we see with the John Ossoffs and the closeness that we're getting in Georgia. And so people are enticed by the Southern Democrat. That is enticing to people, but I just don't think he's the right person for that.
So, Chelsea, if Oprah announces tomorrow she's not running, she's definitely not running, would you want Joe Biden to run for president at the age of 78?
No, and not because of the age.
And not even the age either. I feel like it's
I just don't think he has the ability to win. I think he realized that a couple years ago when he decided that he wasn't going to run for president. I think he's, I'm sure he had people look at it, but he just realizes it's not going to happen. So, but we'll see. Everybody let us know. You can tweet us and our other 109 followers at Trump Report ABTV.
But that's why I think 2018 is going to be important. Get some new governors, lots of new state level positions that are going to help.
But thanks to everybody for joining us in the chat. But of course, thanks to Scott Moore at S-Man80, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. And really, we're at Trump Report ABTV. Everybody's following us now. It's definitely the cool thing to do. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you next Tuesday at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.